Hi there, we're in Romans 13 this week, and Paul is speaking about government authority, and he says, let every person be subject to governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. So, as we consider government authority, we have to realize, first of all, that it's legitimate. It's a legitimate authority. You see in that rest of the passage, Paul talks about good and right, wrong, things of that nature. And so, when it comes to government authority, we have to realize it's, first of all, it's legitimate. Um, the legitimacy of governing authority goes back probably all the way to the days of Noah, when we see the eye for an eye, the lex talionis principle that God instituted for justice in intra-human affairs. And what we see there is that it's of course it's a proportionate justice that's to be done among humanity. Or it's a rectifying justice. It's a righting of wrongs. And when you think of justice, just in the general sense, it's to give someone their just due or their just regard. And government, as a legitimate authority, also has the power of coercion. Obviously, they can collect taxes. Paul refers to that later. But it's legitimate. It's a legitimate authority, but it's also provisional. Um, Government authority won't exist into all eternity. God is the ultimate king and ruler, and yet has delegated a degree of authority and rule to government. Now, government authority isn't the final word, because what you have, I like to think of it this way. I like to think of justice being really the very foundation. The law, of course, above that, and then, of course, government authority deriving its just power and authority from the law and from justice. And what we have here is government authority being, of course, legitimate but provisional, and it's common. It's really to everyone. Every person, Paul says, is to be subject to governing authorities. It's all of humanity has different governments, certainly different degrees of political views, but there is a government authority that is over even tribes, things of that nature. There's some sort of governing authority, rectifying justice for the most part, and it's accountable. I think we have to realize that government authority is accountable, not just to those under their care, but ultimately to God. Not that God always is bringing judgment for rights and wrongs that governments, or blessing for rights and wrongs that governments fail to address or don't address. But governing an authority is something that no one is exempt from, and the goal is justice. And I think it's important, as we reflect upon Romans 13, to keep that in mind. I want to build on that in the next video, but just wanted to get some of those categories out about governing authority being legitimate, but provisional. It's for this age, the post fall, post flood age, until Christ's return. It's common. It's to all humanity. We are under authorities to one degree or another, and yet governing authority is accountable. Governing authority is not something that's just autonomous, but ultimately accountable to God. And think in those categories of justice. Really, you think of laws should be just, and then of course we have governing authority, or legitimate governing authority or jurisdiction, based upon those things that are primary to it, justice and the law. Be blessed.